Welcome back, everyone. Today, we're jumping right into a really fun explainer. We're doing a deep dive into the anatomy of a coarse shred. You know that specific kitchen challenge, getting that perfect texture? Well, we're going to break down exactly how this specific gadget works and what it's meant to do, using some incredibly clear visual documentation. If you love understanding the actual mechanics and the why behind everyday kitchen tasks, you are absolutely in the right place.
So, here is the big question that sparks our entire analysis today. How do you achieve the perfect coarse shred? We've all literally been there, right? You're standing in the kitchen, you need a specific uniform texture for a recipe so everything cooks evenly, and you're just wondering, what's the fastest, most efficient way to get there? Well, today, we've got visual proof of exactly how this is done using a very specific, manually operated kitchen gadget.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Section 1, the mechanics in action. We're going to kick things off by looking at the physical operation of this device in real time.
Now here's where the magic actually happens. Just look at the placement of the user's hands here. With one hand, they're firmly pushing a large solid carrot straight down into the top of that completely clear feeding chute. And, at the exact same time, their other hand is grabbing that light blue-gray crank handle on the side, just turning away to operate the internal drum. It is a completely manual, totally synchronized effort.
What we're really looking at here is a super clever combination of forces, downward pressure plus rotary cranking. The whole device relies on this two-handed physical mechanic to drive a really rapid shredding process. You've got the downward pressure feeding the ingredient into the machine, which then meets that continuous rotary cranking from the side. So the user is actually providing both the feed rate and the shredding power all at once. It's an incredibly smart way to use physical mechanics to save time and energy, especially compared to, struggling with a standard box grater.
And understanding these mechanics becomes so much easier when we break down the visual components of the housing itself. At the top, we've got a transparent feeding chute, which is great because it lets you see exactly how much of your veggie is left. That sits right on top of a dark, translucent base that anchors the whole unit to the table. Then, over on the right, you'll see that light blue and gray crank handle. And finally, the front features a clear dispensing drum housing. Notice how it actually angles downwards? That's specifically designed to guide the finished product right onto your plate.
And this brilliantly illustrates the sheer efficiency of the device. Seriously, just look at this visual contrast from our source material. Up at the top of the machine, we have this dense, solid, whole carrot. But follow the machine's path down to the bottom, and boom, you see this continuous, voluminous flow of coarse orange shreds just tumbling out of the clear dispensing drum, forming this perfect pile on the white paper plate below. It is a total structural transformation happening right before our eyes. But wait, what's actually causing that massive transformation? I mean, it's not just the crank or the chute, right? It's the specific tool sitting inside. So let's transition to Section 2, the core component, inside the shredder.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the isolated drum right down in the bottom left corner. The manufacturer completely separated it from the plastic housing so we can really see its exact structure. Notice those uniform, circular perforations covering the entire surface of the metal cylinder? And it's crowned right at the top with that light blue, gear-like knob.
The source actually explicitly identifies this part in bold, prominent text as the coarse shredding blade. That word coarse is absolutely crucial here. Let me define it for you based on the source. It's the metallic, multi-perforated drum attachment used to create large, thick vegetable strips. Those large raised holes on the drum are specifically engineered not to mince, actually scratch that, not to slice either, but to tear the vegetable into those large, thick, distinct strips we just saw piling up on the plate.
So we know how it works, and we know exactly which blade is doing the heavy lifting. But what should we actually be putting inside that clear feeding chute? Let's move right into Section 3, Suitable Ingredients, What to Shred.
To keep things perfectly structured for our explainer today, I went ahead and categorized the exact recommendations provided by the source document. The graphic gives us 4 specific suitable vegetables for this coarse blade, and we can neatly divide these into 2 columns. On one side, we have firmer roots, the potato and the carrot. On the other side, we have softer gourds, the cucumber and the zucchini.
Let's look at the firmer classics first, the potato and carrot. The source explicitly features whole and halved yellow potatoes, alongside a really vibrant bunch of orange carrots. And honestly, this perfectly aligns with the active demonstration we analyzed earlier, where that solid carrot was being shredded down. These denser vegetables hold up beautifully to that heavy downward pressure and the coarse tearing action of the metallic drum.
But the source doesn't just stop at hard root veggies. It explicitly labels and visually showcases cucumbers and zucchinis as highly suitable matches for this exact blade too. This highlights a really fantastic versatility. I mean, despite being softer, much more water-dense vegetables, the coarse shredding blade is designed to process them effectively without just turning them into complete mush. It's a real game changer. So, what does this all mean for us? The crucial takeaway here is that this simple combination, downward pressure, rotary motion, and a specialized coarse metallic drum, gives you incredible flexibility in the kitchen. Based entirely on the manufacturer's own visual guide, you've got some amazing options for your next meal prep session. We've seen the mechanics, we've analyzed the blade, and we know the recommended ingredients. So I'm going to leave you with this one final thought. Potato, carrot, cucumber, or zucchini, which will you shred first? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and we will see you next time.
Welcome back. If you're someone who totally geeks out over efficiency, smart design, and just finding a better way to do everyday tasks, well, you're in for a treat today. We are going to look at a surprisingly versatile piece of kitchen machinery. We're doing a complete breakdown of something that might seem super simple at first glance, but as we're about to see, it's actually a masterclass in functional design. We are exploring the anatomy of efficiency by examining the multi-blade manual chopper. But before we get into the nuts and bolts of how it works, I want you to think about your own routine in the kitchen. Seriously, how much time do we actually waste meticulously chopping ingredients by hand? We've all been there, right? Standing hunched over a cutting board, desperately trying to get perfectly uniform pieces. It's tedious, it's a huge time sink, and honestly, unless you're a classically trained chef, it can be a massive hassle. That very relatable problem of meal prep fatigue is exactly why today's explainer is so compelling. What if all that time could be condensed into just a fraction of the effort?
Okay, let's dive right into this hub and spoke layout. Right in the center, acting as the main engine, is the manual chopper itself. And radiating out from that central hub are 6 totally distinct culinary outputs, all generated by this exact same device. Today, we're going to take a trip around this wheel, examining what this machine can actually do, starting with the core mechanism itself.
Section 1. The hub. Design anatomy.
We really need to give this central device its due respect, because the engineering here is quite literally what makes everything else possible. If we break down the physical components, you'll see that every single part serves a distinct purpose. Right up top, nestle into that secure light pink or maybe peach-colored locking lid, you'll notice a gray ergonomic pull handle. This right here is the manual engine. It's where your physical effort gets converted into mechanical rotation. Just beneath that lid is a completely clear plastic bowl. Now, why does that matter? Well, that transparency is absolutely vital. It lets the user act as the quality control mechanism. You can monitor the texture of your food in real time, so you know exactly when to stop pulling the handle. And finally, the absolute star of the show inside that bowl, 3 sweeping curved metal blades. Notice how they aren't just stacked flat on top of each other. They're actually staggered at different heights along a central spindle. That staggered design is brilliant. It ensures that as the blades spin, they maximize cutting efficiency by catching ingredients no matter where they happen to land in the bowl.
Section 2. Tackling hardy vegetables.
Let's move on and see how this all builds. Traveling outward to our first category, we have a really fascinating contrast between 2 notoriously crunchy, dense vegetables. On one hand, with the celery, we get this coarse, chunky, pale green dice. The pieces are distinct, perfect for a rustic soup base. But then, compare that to the bright orange carrots. The texture achieved here is completely different. It's a much finer, almost shredded consistency. What this tells us is that those staggered blades aren't just hacking away blindly. Depending on the nature of the vegetable, they adapt to produce everything from a clean dice to a really thorough fine shred.
Section 3. Mastering pungent aromatics.
Moving on to those intensely flavored, tear-inducing aromatics, you can see how this device effortlessly handles a totally different kind of culinary challenge. Vibrant red chilies are reduced to a really fine, incredibly uniform chop, while the dark green chilies get this consistent, thorough mince that is just perfect for distributing heat. But I think the most impressive part is the garlic and ginger. They are pulverized into an almost paste-like consistency. Now, what's really interesting about this is the sheer amount of labor you're saving yourself. Just think about the stinging eyes you get from chopping onions or chilies, or those garlic-scented fingers that seem to linger for literal days. By containing all these pungent ingredients in the bowl, the blades do all that delicate, tear-inducing work, while your hands stay perfectly clean and odor-free. A real game changer for sure.
Section 4. The protein mincing surprise.
Okay, so we've seen vegetables and aromatics, but this brilliantly illustrates the true, surprising power of this device, grinding raw meat. No way, right? This completely defies the typical limits of what we'd ever expect from a simple veggie chopper. Processing raw meat requires some serious force, and it proves that those 3 curved, staggered blades, driven by nothing more than that gray pull handle, actually possess the sheer torque and razor-sharp edge retention needed to break down muscle fibers into a fine mince. This absolutely elevates the tool from just a cute salad prep accessory into a full-blown, heavy-duty kitchen workhorse.
Section 5. The verdict on versatility.
Synthesizing everything we've unpacked across this table, the logic starts to become super clear. We aren't just looking at a random assortment of foods here, we are looking at 3 incredibly demanding, completely distinct culinary categories. For the aromatics, like garlic and chilies, the blades achieved a fine mince all the way down to a smooth paste. For hearty veggies like carrots and celery, they delivered a coarse dice and a fine shred. And for proteins, they actually successfully processed raw meat into a ground mince. Grouping these diverse ingredients together just proves the staggering versatility of this one single device. It handles moisture, density, and tough fibrous textures with equal success.
So, looking at the complete picture of this multi-blade efficiency, the absolutely crucial point to take away is this. Every single beautifully minced, diced, shredded, and ground texture was achieved without a single power cord, without a battery, and without having to lug out a heavy food processor. It's all powered entirely by human hands, pulling a handle, activating a beautifully engineered central hub.
Which leads us to a fascinating final thought to wrap up our explainer today. Looking at this sheer range of capabilities, from turning raw meat into mince, to pulverizing garlic into a paste, to beautifully dicing celery,